Hello and welcome to the Atlas Agency, where we investigate the Arkham Horror living card game. We've made it to the penultimate chapter of the Dunwich Legacy campaign. In this video, we'll take a look at the player cards and scenario content in Mythos Pack number 5, Where Doom Awaits. There are 14 new player cards in Where Doom Awaits, which is slightly more than any previous Mythos pack. There are 2 neutral cards, then Guardians, Survivors, and Rogues get 2 cards each, while Seekers and Mystics get 3 cards each. Of those cards, 5 are level 0, and 9 of the cards are higher level. So let's dive in, starting with those 2 neutral cards. First card is Fine Clothes. This is a level 0 neutral asset, costs 1 resource, occupies your body slot, and it reduces the difficulty of skill tests you perform during parley actions by 2, has 1 health and 1 sanity that it can absorb for you, and an agility icon. Parley is part of the game that really hasn't been explored in player cards up to this point. Not all the parley actions out there even involve skill tests, but a search shows that there are currently 4 that do. There's 1 in the Gathering, 1 in extracurricular activities, 1 in House Always Wins, and then several in the Carnival of Horror standalone scenario. Except for Carnival, those happen to be the first scenarios of each of their 2 campaigns, so that's convenient. You can just plan on upgrading this to something else once you clear those early scenarios. -2 for 1 specific test in each scenario is maybe not that meaningful of a bonus, but it is nice that this also can soak a health or a sanity for you. I'm not quite sure thematically how the clothes are supposed to absorb horror, though. It does seem like it's pretty good for the Carnival of Horror scenario, so if you're running that, then I would definitely take a look at this. I'm not sure if it's intentional or if it's just me, but I also find the art on this to be just a little bit unsettling. I expect that from the encounter cards. I expect less of it from the player cards, but the guy kind of reminds me of a well-dressed but still creepy ventriloquist dummy. Run into too many creepy dolls and you might need a Moment of Respite, our second neutral card. This is a level 3 event that costs 3 resources. It can only be played if there are no enemies at your location. Heals 3 horror from you and also lets you draw a card, and has 2 willpower icons. We'll see that healing and damage prevention is a mini theme that runs through the player cards in this Mythos pack, and I think that several of those cards are pretty good. I count this one among them. 3 horror at once is a nice big amount, and I like that it also replaces that card for you. The level 0 Guardian card is the skill Leadership. Ordinarily, Leadership just contributes a single wild icon to a test. However, when you play it into a test that's being done by another investigator, it gets an additional wild icon and an additional willpower icon. So in your own test, it's just worth 1 wild. Played into someone else's test, it's worth 2, and then the best case scenario, in someone else's willpower test, it becomes worth 3. I think the value of this card really depends on who your partners are going to be. In a vacuum, I don't think the card is that great, but if you're paired with a mystic who will be using their willpower regularly for spells, or if you're paired with a low willpower character who's vulnerable to treacheries, then I think this card starts to look a little bit better. I've Had Worse is a level 4 Guardian event, costs 0 resources. It's fast and you play it when you're dealt damage and or horror. Cancel up to 5 damage and or horror just dealt to you, then gain that many resources. Also has 2 willpower icons and 1 agility icon. I love this card. I would probably say it's my favorite card from this pack. In Guardian, I nearly always run 2 copies of Dodge, that core set event that lets you cancel an attack against someone at your location for 1 resource. I've Had Worse feels to me like an upgraded alternative to Dodge, though honestly I might be happy to run both of these cards. Dodge has a couple of small advantages over I've Had Worse, in that it can be played on other investigators and it cancels a whole attack, not just 5 points, though enemies that attack for more than 4 are pretty rare anyway. But I've Had Worse can cancel any damage, not just damage from an enemy attack, and it also gives you that amazing economic boost. I think this card is as much about those resources as it is about the damage prevention. Guardians have a lot of expensive stuff, like their 4 and 5 cost allies, their big weapons, and their dynamite blast for 5 resources, but not a lot of ways to generate extra resources to pay for those things. Stand Together is nice, but that one only generates 2 resources for you. So this is a great way to shore up some extra resources without even needing to spend an action. I like it a lot, and nice artwork here as well. We've had a few pieces of art showing off some Guardian bandage applications now. This is the first one that, to me, looks competently applied. Like, I believe she's going to be okay. Emergency aid guy, maybe not so much. Rogues get a new level 0 ally asset, Joey Vigil. Costs 4 resources, and he's got a fast ability that lets you spend 1 resource to choose an item asset from your hand and play it, paying its cost. He's also got 3 health and 2 sanity. So what he does is let you play down items without spending actions, and I guess he also allows you to play them in windows where you wouldn't normally be able to play assets. So it seems like it's an interesting combo piece, or at least a window into pulling off some unusual plays, but I'm just not sure at this point what those combos or plays are. As far as saving you actions, he doesn't seem better than Leo DeLuca. He does have some beefy life totals, so that's nice. But I think what I'm going to end up doing is just filing this away for later until a good combo or use arises for him. Ace in the Hole is a level 3 rogue event that costs 0 resources. It's exceptional and fast. You play it only during your turn, and it lets you take an additional 3 actions on your turn. I'm a sucker for cards that give you extra actions, and this is a whole turn's worth of them, so it's pretty exciting. Exceptional means it costs you 6 experience points, so that is a pretty steep cost, but I do think I can see myself going for this as a late campaign purchase. At this point, the exceptional keyword is sort of starting to look like it's a feature of the rogue class. Rogues had Lucky Dice last pack, now they have Ace in the Hole, and one more exceptional rogue card has already been previewed for pack 6. None of the other factions have had any of these, so I guess we'll see if this trend continues, or if it just happens to be coincidental that only rogues got these in the Dunwich cycle. A Chance Encounter is a level 0 survivor event that costs 1 resource. Choose an ally asset in any player's discard pile. Put that asset into play under your control. At the end of the round, if that asset is still in play, discard it. This card sets me looking for allies with nice effects that trigger when they come into play. So far it turns out those are mostly in the Seeker class. The best target right now would seem to be Art Student to let you discover a clue automatically for 1 resource. Another angle might be Guardian allies like Beat Cop or Brother Xavier for their free damage abilities, but I don't like those quite as much as the Art Student thing. None of those are in faction for Survivor, so it's nice that this lets you pull from any player's discard pile. This is one to look back at whenever we get new allies with Enters Play triggers, especially expensive ones. I like the card, but I think it may be a little bit of time before the card pool catches up to it and gives us some good targets for it. 2 experience points will get you the new Survivor skill card, Stroke of Luck. This one has a single wild icon. You can only commit it to a skill test that you yourself are performing. After revealing chaos tokens for this test, you may choose to exile Stroke of Luck. If you do, this test is automatically successful, unless an autofail token was revealed. Exile again means that you remove the card from your deck, and then before the next game you replace it with a level 0 card. This card reminds me a little of the Defiance skill card that Mystics got in Blood on the Altar. The effects are pretty different, but both feel to me sort of like insurance policies that you use in really important tests. I wasn't a fan of Defiance, but I like this one a lot more. It's neat that it makes the test successful regardless of your skill value, so you can win a test that you just have no business winning. There's also a good combo here with Double or Nothing. I like that you can wait to decide whether or not to use this until after you've seen what you've drawn, so if it isn't necessary, then you don't waste the experience by triggering the exile effect. Moonlight Ritual is a level 0 mystic event that costs 0 resources. It simply allows you to remove all Doom tokens from 1 card that you control. So currently there are 3 player cards that use Doom. There's the Arcane Initiate ally from the core set, the Blood Pact permanent, and Alyssa Graham from the last Mythos pack. With Arcane Initiate, you're probably better off just finding a way to kill it instead of using Midnight Ritual, but it does seem useful for those other 2 cards. Lets you be a lot more aggressive in using those abilities that add Doom tokens, so it's a nice utility to have, and it makes all those cards, as well as any future cards that use Doom, just a little bit easier to work with. Throughout the Dunwich cycle, we've been getting upgraded versions of each of the class skill cards from the core set. This time out, we've got a level 2 version of the Mystic skill Fearless. This upgrade gives it a second willpower icon and also allows it to heal a second horror from you if you succeed at the test by 2 or more. This one's pretty straightforward, and it's probably pretty close to what you expected if you noticed this card was due for an upgrade. I do like the card though, especially for Agnes, gives her more uses of her damage dealing ability. Jewel of Arulus is a level 3 mystic asset that costs 3 resources, occupies your accessory slot, and has a reaction ability that triggers after a whammy symbol is revealed during a skill test at your location. You can exhaust the card to draw 1 card or gain 2 resources. This seems like an okay card, but for whatever reason I'm not finding myself too interested by it. It's a bit like a more powerful version of Rabbit's Foot, which is a card that I use for some investigators, but I don't tend to run it in Agnes. It is nice that this one triggers off of any investigator, which probably makes it a bit better in multiplayer. Your mileage may vary on this one, and I don't think it's a bad card, but for me it's just not one I'm excited to try out. And finally we come to the Seekers. For Seekers, this pack is a little outside the ordinary in that it has 3 cards that are each different evolutions of the same base card, and that card is Strange Solution, the one that's up on the screen right now. Strange Solution Unidentified is not from Where Doom Awaits, but rather came out in the Dunwich Legacy Deluxe box. The card required you to pass a test so that you could make the cryptic campaign note, "You have identified the solution." Up until now, that campaign note has been meaningless, and we've all been wondering what it would end up doing. Where Doom Awaits has answered that question in the form of 3 different upgraded versions of Strange Solution. Each of these is level 4 and has the stipulation that you can only upgrade it from the unidentified Strange Solution, and only if you've identified the solution. So they're higher level player cards with extra hoops you have to jump through in order to get them. This is in line with what I'd expected the resolution to Strange Solution to be. I thought it'd be 1 higher level player card that would require you to identify the solution before you could use it. So I was surprised that we got multiple different versions. I was also caught off guard a little bit by that requirement that you upgrade it directly from the level 0 version. I only used Strange Solution in one of my campaigns, but I'd identified it in Game 1 and it got replaced before Game 2. I played it as written. I swapped the level 0 back in for 1 experience, then upgraded for 4 more for a total of 5, but I suspect a lot of people just ignored that rule for the campaigns they already had underway and just paid the 4. I guess the point is to stop you from swapping between the different versions cheaply between games, but I'm not sure that was worth the added annoyance. So let's run through the specific effects of each of these before discussing them further. So each of these Strange Solution variants follows a basic pattern. It's a 1-cost asset with 2 matching skill icons, uses and a certain number of supplies, and then an ability that lets you spend one of those supplies and an action to do something special. Number 1 here is Restorative Concoction. This one lets you spend one of its 4 supplies to heal 2 damage from an investigator at your location, and it's got 2 willpower icons. Number 2 here is the Freezing variant. This one comes with 4 supplies. You can spend a supply to evade with a base agility skill of 6, and it's got 2 agility icons. Then last but not least, we have number 3, Acidic Ichor, which has only 3 supplies. You can spend one of those supplies to fight with a base combat skill of 6. The attack deals +2 damage, and it's got 2 combat skill icons. So I think the clear winner here is the Acidic Ichor variant, which is an incredible weapon for only 1 resource. In fact, I think that one is so far ahead of the other 2 options that it's sort of a problem for this set as a whole. Outside of a few specific scenarios, I don't know why you would choose those boosted shots at evading an enemy over an equally effective 3 shots at dealing 3 damage a pop. Your base skill is equalized to 6 whichever route you go, so it just seems like you would be better off killing the enemies rather than evading them, and the healing version doesn't compare favorably to the damage version either. I would have liked to have seen some variation in the experience point cost on these. I don't think that these all needed to be level 4. Staggering the levels would have been a nice way to balance the different options. It also would have been nice to have one be a level 2 version for characters like Roland, who can take the level 0 version of Strange Solution, but then can't get any of the solved versions. I know a lot of people out there who are playing the campaign as it's released probably solved Strange Solution with a character who ended up being unable to take any of these upgrades. It's a mistake players are only going to make one time, but it's just another blemish on the way that this was executed. If they'd done multiple levels, maybe they could have also spread the different versions out across a few packs too, and that would have let some of the lower level ones come out closer to the unsolved version. I still think the whole Strange Solution thing was a cool thing to do. I just hope they refine the execution a little bit, though, if they dip back into the same waters and do something similar next cycle. So now that we're nearing the end of the Dunwich Legacy campaign, I think I'm getting a little bit better sense of what I like in a campaign scenario versus what I dislike. And one of the things that's been really important to me in Dunwich has been campaign interconnectedness, basically how much the scenario uses and generates those campaign events. It's probably not too hard to predict that I would end up valuing this, since campaign mode is a pretty major draw for the game. But in my opinion, not every scenario has done as much as I would have liked in this area. Where Doom Awaits, though, definitely succeeds here. It's probably close to being tied with Blood on the Altar for the best campaign usage. That sort of thing gets me predisposed to like the scenario before I've even finished setup, when I see it referencing all these little things that have come before. So again, that's a success here in Where Doom Awaits. So thematically, Where Doom Awaits feels pretty similar to me to The Devourer Below from the core set. Same sort of plot where you're searching through the woods, trying to track down some bad guys in time to stop them from doing a really bad thing. I don't like The Devourer Below for a lot of reasons, but I did find Where Doom Awaits to be a much more enjoyable attempt at the same sort of story. My first play of this scenario was a really close, tense game where I succeeded, but I just barely drug my near-dead body over the finish line. I had a lot of fun that first play. My next two plays, the scenario just pounded my investigators into the ground, and then in my final two campaigns, I walked through it with really pretty minimal trouble. I think I finished while it was still on the first agenda. I think the difficulty can be fairly swingy in this, and I think some people have taken issue with that, and it is a fair complaint. The encounter deck is pretty large, and that's part of it, so you may or may not hit the worst cards that are in there. I had one run where I hit very few enemies and drew mostly treacheries, and that made it a lot easier to get to the finish line. Your past decisions also have a pretty big impact on the challenge level. I think that's actually a nice feature, not a complaint. You may have some plays of this that are a little frustrating, but on the whole, I wasn't too bothered by it. Something I want to mention that I appreciated about Where Doom Awaits is that I found that it really got me looking forward to the final scenario in the campaign, Lost in Time and Space. A lot of the earlier scenarios have ended without doing too much to propel you forward into the next chapter. Like you arrive in Dunwich, but you're not exactly sure what you're going to be doing now that you're there. Where Doom Awaits, though, has a direct cliffhanger for the final chapter, and I found it pretty effective at getting me hyped to finish out the campaign. I really wish I could have just gone straight into playing the final scenario, but unfortunately, since I played this the day it was released, I had a whole month ahead of me to wait for that. Last thing I want to mention, when I do these scenario reviews, I try to stay as spoiler-free or spoiler-light as I can. For Where Doom Awaits, that does mean I have to skip talking about what I think is one of the more striking things that the scenario does, something that I thought was a pretty interesting design decision. So sorry, you'll just have to play it for yourself, but it's in one of the resolutions. And that's a wrap for Where Doom Awaits. As always, thanks for watching. For more Arkham content, including my written scenario guide, take a look at our site at atlasofarkham.wordpress.com and subscribe to this video series. Thanks!